When someone who once ran from love finally walks back into your life, do you open your arms, close your heart, or choose the one response that makes them realize you were always their home? There was a night when your world felt quieter than usual, not because the stars had dimmed, but because someone who once filled your sky had disappeared. They were the kind of soul who loved like the ocean loves the shore, always touching, never staying. An avoidant heart. Beautiful, mysterious, terrifyingly distant. You loved them not because they were easy, but because they were rare, like a poem that only reveals its meaning after the 10th reading. When they left, they didn't slam the door. They simply faded, like perfume in the wind. And you stood there holding memories like pressed flowers, wondering if they would ever bloom again. Then one day, they returned. Not with fireworks, not with speeches, just a message. Hey. A quiet knock on the door of your peace. Most people think this is the moment to celebrate, to pour out every feeling they saved, to ask, why did you leave? But love, real love, knows something deeper. Their return is not the prize. It is the test. Because when an avoidant comes back, they are not just looking at you, they are measuring if you are still the same person they once walked away from. So you don't rush. You don't interrogate. You don't cling. You breathe. Because silence, my dear, is the language that unsettles a fleeing heart. When you respond calmly instead of emotionally, warmly instead of desperately, you become a mystery they can't solve. And avoidant souls are drawn to mysteries the way moths are drawn to candlelight. You greet them kindly, but not completely. You smile, but you don't melt. You speak, but you don't spill. Not because you don't care, but because your love has matured into something stronger than longing. You are no longer waiting. You are choosing. They expect the old version of you, the one who chased, who reassured, who tried to prove love every second. But what they find is someone steady, someone peaceful, someone who loves like the moon loves the tide, constant, patient, and never begging. And that is when something changes in their eyes. Because the only right way to respond when an avoidant comes back, is not to pull them close. It is to stand still and let them walk the distance. You let them talk. You let them explain. You let them show. Because words are easy for someone who once left. Effort is not. So you listen the way a calm lake listens to rain, without resistance, without urgency, without losing its stillness. Your calm becomes their mirror. Your peace becomes their question. Your presence becomes their gravity. And slowly, they lean closer. Not because you asked, but because you didn't. Love, you see, is not proven when someone returns. It is proven when they stay. So you don't hand them your heart the moment they knock. You let them earn the rhythm again. Step by step, truth by truth, action by action. Because the strongest love stories are not written by those who run after love, but by those who become so deeply rooted in themselves that love learns to run back to them. When they return, it can feel like the story has finally chosen a happy chapter. Your heart may flutter the way it did the first time their name lit up your screen, and memories may rush back like waves reclaiming the shore. But love, the kind that grows wiser through longing, understands something the hopeful heart often forgets: a return is not proof of love. It is proof of curiosity, proof of comfort, proof of unfinished emotion. Victory is not in their footsteps approaching you again, victory is in whether those footsteps have learned why they once walked away. An avoidant soul doesn't return because they suddenly transformed into someone fearless. They return because distance taught them something presence could not. Maybe they felt your absence like a missing note in a melody. Maybe silence echoed louder than your voice ever did. Maybe they discovered that the world they ran toward did not hold the warmth they left behind. But their return is not a declaration. It is a question, soft and unspoken: are you still the same person I left? And this is where love must become wisdom. Because if you greet them with the same longing, the same instant availability, the same open door they once took for granted, then nothing has changed for them. The story resets. The pattern waits patiently to repeat. The test is not for them alone. It is for you. It asks whether your love has deepened into self-respect or remained frozen in old hope. So you stand gently in your growth. You let your presence speak of peace they didn't see before. You let your eyes show that you missed them, but not at the cost of yourself. Your calm becomes the quiet proof that time shaped you, not shattered you. And suddenly their return shifts meaning. It is no longer a reward you receive. It is a moment they must rise to deserve. Because when someone who once left walks back into your life, love does not celebrate immediately. Love watches. Love listens. Love observes the spaces between their words, the intention behind their gestures, the patience inside their effort. Their return is simply the opening scene, and what matters is whether they now know how to stay when they step back into your world. Your heart may tremble with 1,000 questions waiting at your lips. Why did you leave? Did you miss me? Do you still love me? Will you disappear again? Each question carries a piece of your longing, each one shaped by nights you spent talking to memories instead of them. But love, when it matures through patience and quiet strength, begins to understand that questions do not always reveal truth. Sometimes, they only reveal your fear of losing what has not even returned yet. An avoidant heart is a delicate listener. It does not lean closer when it feels pressure. It leans away. The moment they sense interrogation, even gentle interrogation wrapped in affection, something inside them stiffens like a door slowly closing. Not because they don't care, but because their nature was built to protect itself from emotional storms. Questions, especially too many too soon, can feel like thunder to a soul that is still deciding whether it is safe to stay. So instead of asking, you breathe. Instead of seeking answers, you become still. Silence, in moments like these, is not emptiness. It is elegance. It is the soft candlelight that allows truth to step forward on its own. When you remain calm, when you allow pauses to exist without rushing to fill them, you create a space where they can speak freely rather than defensively. Silence becomes your quiet confidence. It tells them you are no longer afraid of what they might say or what they might not. And something beautiful begins to unfold. They start explaining without being asked. They begin revealing without being pushed. Words slip from them the way petals fall from a flower that finally trusts the morning sun. Because silence does something questions never can, it removes pressure. It tells them they are not standing in a courtroom. They are standing in a garden. In that garden, your quiet presence becomes more powerful than any sentence you could form. Your stillness says, I am strong enough to wait for truth. Your calm says, I don't need to chase your honesty. And your silence whispers the message their heart understands best, that love, when real, never forces its way into the light, it simply creates a space. Where truth feels safe enough to appear. There was a time when loving them felt like running through rain, breathless, hopeful, arms stretched forward as if you could catch their drifting shadow before it slipped beyond reach. You believed love meant pursuit, meant proving, meant showing them again and again that your heart was a place worth staying. And perhaps they cared, perhaps they felt something soft and unspoken for you, but the more you moved toward them, the more they seemed to move away, like mist retreating from the warmth of morning light. Not because your love was too much, but because chasing awakened their instinct to flee. An avoidant heart is not drawn to pursuit. It is drawn to gravity. And gravity does not chase the stars. It simply exists with such quiet power that everything eventually learns to orbit it. When they return, the old version of you might want to run toward them again, to close the distance quickly before they change their mind. But the new version of you understands a deeper truth. Love that chases teaches someone they can run and still be followed. Love that stands still teaches someone they must walk if they wish to come closer. So you soften your pace. You allow space between messages. You respond warmly, but not instantly. You show interest, but not urgency. Not as a game, not as a strategy, but as a reflection of the peace you have grown into while they were gone. Your energy becomes calm, steady, grounded, like a lighthouse that does not swim toward ships yet guides them safely to shore. And they notice. They notice that you are no longer reaching with restless hands. They notice that your voice carries ease instead of longing. They notice that your presence feels like a quiet melody rather than a desperate song. This is when attraction begins to change shape. It is no longer fueled by your effort. It is awakened by your stillness. Because the truth most people never realize is that chasing creates comfort, but calm creates curiosity. When you stop pursuing, you become someone they must move toward if they wish to feel you again. Your energy shifts from seeking love to embodying it, from asking for closeness to becoming the place closeness longs to return to. When they stand before you again, there is a fragile moment suspended between past and present, a moment so delicate it could shatter under the weight of the wrong tone, the wrong expression, the wrong breath. An avoidant heart does not read love through dramatic confessions or intense emotion. It reads love through safety. And nothing speaks safety more clearly than calm eyes and a soft voice. Not the kind of softness that comes from weakness, but the kind born from someone who has learned how to hold storms inside without letting them break the sky. Your eyes tell your story before your lips ever move. If they see accusation, they feel distance. If they see desperation, they feel pressure. But when they see calm, steady, warm, unhurried, it unsettles them in the gentlest way. Because calm eyes do not demand. They invite. They do not pull. They allow. They are like still water reflecting the moon, showing truth without forcing it to appear. In that reflection, they begin to notice something they did not expect. You are not fragile without them. You are peaceful with or without them. And that realization stirs something deeper than attraction. It stirs respect. Then comes your voice, soft not in volume but in energy. The softness of someone who does not need to raise their tone to be heard. The softness of someone who speaks from certainty, not fear. When you speak this way, your words wrap around them instead of pressing against them. They do not feel cornered. They feel welcomed. Each sentence becomes a gentle place to land rather than a wall they must climb. Your voice becomes the atmosphere of the moment, and they begin to breathe differently inside it. What they experience, though they may not say it aloud, is unfamiliar comfort. They expected tension. They expected emotional waves. They expected the old version of you whose feelings rose like sudden thunder. Instead, they find a quiet horizon, steady and vast, and they cannot help but lean closer to understand it. Because calmness is magnetic in a world used to chaos, and softness is disarming to a heart trained to defend itself. In that space, your presence becomes reassurance without promises, warmth without pressure, closeness without demand. And the more gently you exist in front of them, the more their guarded walls begin to loosen, brick by brick, not from force but from the quiet realization that they are standing near someone who no longer needs to chase, prove, or persuade to be worthy of love. When they left, they did not just walk away from you. They walked away from a space you once opened with trust, a place you decorated with patience, hope, and quiet devotion. That door was not ordinary. It was carved from your vulnerability, painted with your tenderness, and held together by your belief that love, when real, would recognize its home. So when they return and stand before that same door again, something inside you may feel tempted to swing it open wide, as if their presence alone is proof they belong there. But love that has grown wiser understands that doors of the heart are not meant to be reopened by nostalgia. They are meant to be reopened by effort. An avoidant soul often expects familiarity to grant them instant access. They remember how easily you once welcomed them, how naturally you forgave, how quickly you reassured. But this moment is different. Not colder, not harsher, simply clearer. Because now you know that love offered too freely can be mistaken for love that costs nothing. And what costs nothing is rarely protected. So you do not shut the door, and you do not throw it open. You leave it gently closed, your hand resting softly against its surface, your presence calm and unguarded. You let them see that the entrance still exists, that you have not erased them from your story, but you also let them feel that stepping inside requires intention. Not grand gestures, not poetic apologies, just steady proof, consistent presence, honest words, patient actions repeated until they form a pattern stronger than their past disappearance. They may pause, uncertain at first. They may test the silence, wondering why you are not rushing to pull them inside like before. And that pause is sacred. Because it is in that quiet hesitation that they begin to understand something new about you. Your love is still warm, but it is no longer automatic. It is offered, not handed. Shared, not surrendered. Each small effort they make becomes a knock on that door. Each sincere moment becomes a key slowly forming in their hands. And the more they realize they must earn what they once received freely, the more valuable your presence becomes in their eyes, the more carefully they step, the more intentionally they speak, the more deeply they feel the privilege of standing close to a heart that now knows its own worth.